And welcome back to the Nerds United in Brevard podcast. This week we're going to have a great interview with my brother-in-law, Science Pete. He's going to be talking about some good news in the world of science. This interview was recorded at Space Coast Comicon. This week is brought to you by the Hangin with Web Show YouTube channel. Merce, Science Pete, take it away.
All right, welcome back to the Nub Podcast. I've got another great interview to do here. This is Peter. How do you say your last name?
Felton.
Felton. Okay. So this is actually going to be a little deviation from what we've been doing here at the Space Coast Comicon. Peter, why don't you tell us what you do for a living?
So I am a research scientist, and in the broad sense, where I don't necessarily specialize in any one field. So I'm a student of all of the, primarily molecular biology, if you had to characterize that. But I've been involved in everything from human forensics, assay development, biowarfare defense, diabetes, obesity research, and now infectious disease, immunology, and in my current iteration, my primary focus is on trying to cure childhood cancers, pediatric cancers at Nemours Children's Hospital.
And that's the exciting one that I really want to talk to you about. So basically, you guys are working on cures that will only work on kids. And why was that?
Yeah, so there's a misconception. Cancer is a catch-all term for many different causes that cause cancer, whether it's in adults or children. So when people say, why haven't we had a cure for cancer? There are dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of different types of cancers, and just as many reasons, if not more, for why cancers can happen. And the thing with children's cancer and pediatric cancer is that in most cases, the cancers that kids get, and I'm talking kids that are prepubescent, these are children anywhere from 6 months old up to, say, 12, 13, when they, beginning puberty. These cancers are failures during development, and it's through no fault of the parents, and it's no fault of the child. We don't know if there's an environmental factor in any of this, but these are things that it's not anybody's fault. It just happens. As opposed to many adult cancers that we talk about, usually are the result of years of some sort of destructive influence, whether it's drinking, smoking, carcinogens in the environment or whatever. Those are damage, and the biology is fundamentally different. So when we talk about trying to find cures for pediatric cancers, currently those therapies that we use are based upon adult studies over the years. Because in the grand scheme of things, pediatric cancers are considered rare cancers. Trouble being is it's no fault of them or the kids or the parents, but it's happening in our children, and it's oftentimes it's very devastating, and most of these are generally lethal. So the most information we have is from our study into adult cancers and how to treat those. The big failure with children is that all those treatments that we do for adults are very destructive to children still in a developing state. So when we talk about chemotherapies and radiation treatments, when you do this in a child who is not fully developed, and we all talk about stem cells and things like that, so think of kids as being early stem cell, like they have not fully developed yet. And so when you start killing those cells early on, or in the case of, you can cause mutations. I mean, everybody thinks about irradiation and chemo treatment. We can cause mutations in these early stem cells, and we're still developing cells in children, that even if we can cure a child of their pediatric cancer, they are at an incredibly high risk, 30-40% risk or greater, of developing adult cancers later on, because strictly due to the damage that was caused from the treatments to cure their childhood cancer. And oftentimes, too, these children will also have developmental defects, learning disabilities, mental retardation. And so even if the children do survive, they're still could be in for a long, hard life due to just strictly due to the therapy that was given to them. So there really is a need, an underserved need, to find better ways of treating our children. And that's what our focus is at Nemours, in Orlando. So I'm at the Nemours Children's Hospital in Orlando. And that's one of our primary focuses, is to come up with new ways of treating these pediatric cancers to minimize the secondary effects and the side effects, so these children hopefully can survive and go on to lead normal lives. And I mean, there's some cancers that when children get them, we have certain types of gliomas. They're brain tumors. They're 100% lethal. There is no therapy, to the point where doctors don't even bother to biopsy because there is no treatment on this. And many of our other cancers that children get, it's a broad range, but the success rates, survival rates are still very, very low.
Now, what I found very interesting was one of the treatments that you guys were working on. One of the ways that you were thinking of delivering said treatment really just blew me away. Can you go into that a little bit for me?
Yeah. So the one that David's actually specifically talking about is the idea of using a virus, a pathogenic infectious virus, to specifically target, like a smart bomb, a smart missile, to specifically target and kill only cancer cells, leaving the healthy cells alone. And so this concept is not new. This has been around. This was thought of as early as the 60s. And we call these oncolytic viruses, meaning that we will attack and kill a cancer's oncogene, cells that have oncogenes turned on. But the problem with these approaches is that they have been based upon very nasty pathogens. Things like hepatitis, polio, herpes, measles. Okay, these are viruses that in and of themselves are dangerous, and oftentimes they'll cause chronic infections when you talk about things like hepatitis and herpes. So researchers have been working for a long time to use modified versions of these viruses. We mutate them, we make them so they can't replicate, or we try to reduce how dangerous they are to the host, but it still doesn't change the fact that there is an underlying very nasty disease that you could have for the rest of your life. But they work, but none of them have ever been through the FDA. So it's been an uphill battle. So
I guess at that point in time, you have to think about: do I want herpes for the rest of my life, or do I want to die from cancer?
And that's precisely it. Now, yes, they try to engineer these viruses so to minimize some of the danger and maybe make them so they can't replicate. So, okay, I can use this polio virus, but it's a one shot. Once you get infected, it'll never make more. And so you hope you can clear all those cancer cells at once. Okay, that's good in theory, but as you can see, we've been working on this for 60 years, 40 years, 50, 60 years. We still don't have any of these types of therapies. Now, one thing we're doing at Nemours, and we're taking it at a little bit different angle. Most people have heard of Zika virus. It was big in the news a couple of years ago. Big scare coming out of South America, Brazil, causing microcephaly in children. So big problem. They were scared of it. Well, what was not really made clear is that Zika virus, for all intents and purposes, does not affect adults or children with mature immune systems. So after about the age of 2, when your immune system becomes fully developed, there can be some side effects, but usually they're non-specific, but you're not going to cause things like hydrocephaly or death. Most of the time in adults or children over the age of 2, if they did get infected, they're either asymptomatic, meaning they'll never know they got infected, or they could have an autoimmune response called Guillain-Barré syndrome, that's just a non-specific autoimmune response to a viral infection. But you'll generally clear that virus after 2 weeks, no big deal. Now, and there is some cases that you can be a carrier for a little bit longer. For men, you can have it as a sexually transmitted disease. But really, Zika infections are only a danger for a developing fetus. The reason that is because the cells that the virus attacks, they're neuronal cells. We call them neuroblastomas, or neuroblasts rather. Neuroblasts. I'll get to the oma part in a sec. But it infects and kills those cells during development. And that's why you can kill these early developing cells. Well, many of us know, a lot of us know, that neurons, as you develop, they terminally differentiate, we call it. So that means you can't make any more as you get older. That's why when you get paralyzed, we can't just grow you more neurons so you can cure the paralysis, which we're getting to actually, but that's a side topic for another day. So that's a big reason why adults and more developed children it's really not a big deal, because we just simply do not have a number of cells for the virus to infect. Well, the interesting part about a lot of pediatric cancers is that they're characteristically stuck in that developing state where the virus can recognize. And so as it's continuing to grow and make its tumor, it's stuck in that state, so it's growing along, and then for whatever reason, that cell just stops being able to differentiate, to grow to adulthood, and it just keeps making more of itself, and that's what cancer is.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting, cool part about this is that Zika will still infect those. And this is in children that their brains are basically developed to the point where Zika won't infect it there, so the virus should only attack the tumor cells. And that's, in fact, what we find. And so we first came across this, some of my colleagues, and they got the idea, well, Zika virus is killing these developing neuronal cells. Well, we have this. All right, so what do we pick up?
So we basically just had a little malfunction there. So
no problem.
You were discussing the Zika virus and how it works in children. Yep. Now, real quick, if I remember correctly, you also were telling me that this process would not work in adults, right? This delivery system would not work in adults.
Well, not working in adults.
Virus,
in the sense of, yes, an adult can get infected by Zika virus, but we simply do not have enough of the cell type to support an active infection, and so you can get it infected, but your immune system's going to clear it without any problems. You won't, in most cases, more than 80% of the cases, you don't even know that you're infected with. You might think you have a common cold, and then you just move on with it. And so, getting back to the pediatric cancer, so we found in neuroblastoma that Zika virus can kill it. We have a technique that we grow cancer cells in a dish, in a plate, and we tested many different types of neuroblastoma cells in dishes and found that it was effective at killing all of them except one. And that one that it didn't kill was because that neuroblastoma, was a little bit more mature.
Yeah.
But we were able to use that to figure out why this was happening. And so when we discovered why, we found this little protein that sits on the top surface of the cells that acted as a biomarker for us. So it acts as like a little, gave us an indication of what to look for. And when we started looking at other types of pediatric cancers, so liver cancers, kidney cancers, some brain tumors, we found that they also had those same protein characteristic on the surface, and lo and behold, they could all be killed by Zika virus in a dish.
Okay.
So killing something in a dish is great.
Yeah.
But it's in a dish. It's a single cell.
Yeah.
What happens when you get into a body? And that's what we're working on now. And what's really exciting is that, so part of our research, people can debate upon this, but for current biomedical research, we have to use an animal model, because I don't have a lot of humans lining up at the door for me to test on. Okay. And so, without going into the gory details, we use mice that are immunocompromised, meaning they don't have an intact immune system, so we can grow a human tumor in those mice. And there's different techniques. We used one where we started by growing neuroblastoma under the skin of mice. And it takes a couple of months, like 8 weeks, to get a good-sized tumor. So we physically inject cells, purified cells, under the skin. They grow into that tumor. And then, and this data is brand new, so I can't go. I don't want.
This is like cutting edge.
This is data as of yesterday. that, when we treated these tumors, we injected them with Zika virus. We were able to, after 2 weeks, we had, in almost every case, greater than 75% reduction of the tumor size, as well as in some cases we completely eliminated the tumor signal. So this is very exciting because this is a first proof of principle in a mouse model that Zika virus may be a viable therapy for killing at least neuroblastoma, an aggressive form of neuroblastoma in mammals and potentially in humans. So this is a very big deal because
this is like the very beginning of it. So we don't know for sure, but this is some exciting news. Though.
I'm not running to the bank yet. We're not injecting humans. We're not going to go injecting kids with this anytime soon.
Well, not on purpose, at least.
Not on purpose. I will. Full disclosure: do not attempt this at home.
Okay.
If you have a child,
so do not inject your own.
Yes. If you have a child who is suffering from a pediatric cancer now, do not, and I repeat, do not
give them the Zika virus.
Intentionally infect them with Zika virus.
Because you guys have modified. It's not like you just
no.
Them Zika virus.
Well, this is wild. There's different strains of Zika virus or different types of virus around the world, but we still do not know how this would fully react in a child who was going to go through approved therapy so far. And I stress that, do not try this. This is cutting-edge research. However, this is minimum 10 to 15 years away before we'd ever try to do clinical trials. But this is how the process begins.
It's still exciting.
This is incredibly exciting because, as we know from Mother Nature, she's already done the epidemiology for us that we know, at least in adults and probably kids, that regular wild-type strain that you get out in the environment doesn't really cause us much problems. It definitely doesn't cause any adverse reaction in mice, but mice are not the natural host for it. So, but this is an exciting beginning. And we have found that at least in dishes, we can potentially treat it with these others, with Zika virus with these other pediatric cancers. Funny part is we tried it in some adult cancers and it doesn't work at all, which does not surprise us. We had some indications that some adult cancers it might be effective in, breast cancer specifically, certain types of breast cancer. But yeah, this is all cutting edge, new, exciting things that we're already gearing up to start our next experiments to continue this going. So keep your ears peeled.
Oh, we definitely will. It's very, very exciting. Well, Pete, thank you for coming on. Thank you for giving us this just amazing interesting
anytime.
Interview about I know you say that it's not new to the field, but I'm pretty sure 90% of the population has no idea that people have been using viruses to try and kill cancer cells.
Right,
so.
And there was a paper published out of Brazil last year that they weren't doing it in the same manner that we were, but they showed with a different type of brain tumor. That they could eliminate the brain tumor in mice using the virus. But their goal is not as a therapy. These are basic scientists. They want to understand the biology, and they were just looking for cells that they can grow Zika in. We look at it because we're pediatric people. We understand the pediatric biology of things. We're looking at it as a therapy. And, we still have to try to, finish our experiments, convince the FDA that, if we do want to intentionally inject a child with cancer with Zika virus, we're not going to kill them.
Exactly.
We're not going to have major adverse reactions. But in the case of some brain tumors, like I was telling you about, there is no therapy. It's 100% death.
So you might as well try something.
Right. And so if we can have at least some potential, a right to treat, even though it's experimental, that's something that hopefully we can offer these children and these parents some hope. So.
That is amazing. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Yep, anytime.
And keep us updated. If anything new comes from this,
Of course.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to this one. Keep your ears posted. We'll be doing some more podcasts from the Space Coast Comicon.